thought the fight was over. For the first time in nearly a century, it looked like gun owners in America had won a real victory. The $200 NFA tax stamp that had haunted suppressors, short-barreled rifles, and short-barreled shotguns since 1934 was finally dead. Gone. Zero. No more paying Uncle Sam just for the privilege of screwing a can onto the end of your rifle, or owning a firearm with a shorter barrel. In July of 2025, Congress pushed through H.R. OWN, and tucked inside that bill was the provision gun owners had dreamed of for decades. The National Firearms Act tax reduced to nothing. And starting January 2026, that freedom was set to take effect for everyone across the country. For 90 years, the NFA tax was never about safety. It was never about crime prevention. It was about one thing: pricing ordinary Americans out of their rights. $200 in 1934 was equal to nearly $4,000 today. For decades, suppressors were not banned outright, but they might as well have been. They became exotic toys for the wealthy, or props for Hollywood villains, while the average hunter or shooter couldn't even consider them. Cutting that tax to zero wasn't just a policy change. It was a recognition, finally, that these tools are safety devices, not threats. They reduce recoil, protect hearing, and keep communities quieter. For once, it felt like Washington had remembered the Constitution. But almost before the ink was dry, the gut punch came. While shooters across the nation were high-fiving and celebrating the end of the tax, Senator Chris Murphy of Connecticut was sharpening his knife. He didn't just want to bring the tax back. He wanted to crank it to a level no one could afford. His idea? A new suppressor tax of $4,799 per item. Not $200 like your grandfather's day. Not even $500. Nearly $5,000, buried inside a defense spending bill, so the average American wouldn't see it until it was too late. This is the reality gun owners are facing right now. The tax that was supposed to be gone forever is being resurrected in the worst way possible. Murphy's amendment isn't about raising revenue, it's about shutting the door on ordinary people. He went back to the original $200 figure from 1934, adjusted it for inflation, saw it landed around $4.500 and decided to round up. That's the math, if you can even call it that. In practice, it means that anyone looking to buy a suppressor, which already costs between $800 and $1,200, would have to tack on nearly $5,000 just to register it. Overnight, suppressors would once again become toys for the rich, locked away from the very people who need them most. Working-class shooters, hunters, veterans, and civilians on a budget. And that's the real point. If they can price you out, they don't need to ban anything. They just make it impossible for ordinary gun owners to participate. That's the strategy. They know they can't walk into Congress and pass an outright ban. They know they can't get Americans to accept mass confiscation. But taxes? Fees? Inflation adjustments? That's the back door. Murphy didn't stop at suppressors. His amendment also takes the AOW, any other weapon fee, and bumps it from $5 to $55. That sounds small compared to $5,000, but it's death by 1,000 cuts. If they normalize this trick, they can apply it everywhere. Magazines, ammo, optics, even receivers. Imagine a public safety fee tacked onto every box of 9mm, or a $500 stamp for a 30-round mag. That's how you strangle the Second Amendment without ever writing the word ban. What makes this even more sinister is how they're trying to pass it. Murphy knows there's no chance he could stand in front of America and win a straight vote on a $4.799 suppressor tax. People would laugh him out of the room. So instead, he's trying to bury it in the NDAA, the National Defense Authorization Act. That's the must-pass bill that funds the military, the Pentagon's lifeline. Every year it moves through Congress, because voting no is political suicide. No senator wants to look like they turned their back on the troops. And that's where Murphy hid the landmine, inside a bill no one dares oppose. It's legislative camouflage. Make the amendment small enough, tuck it into a 1,000-page defense budget, and dare your opponents to find it. If they miss it, boom, you've got yourself a new gun tax without ever facing the public debate. If it sticks, the victory we thought we had is erased before it even takes effect. The $0 tax, due to start in January 2026, would be wiped clean from the books and replaced with the largest NFA fee in history. Now, let's get real. Is this going to pass tomorrow? Probably not. It's election season. Half the Senate doesn't want their name tied to a $5,000 gun tax right before voters head to the polls. Murphy knows he doesn't have the numbers today, But that's not the point. The point is to load the chamber and wait for the right moment. All it takes is one bad headline, one criminal misusing a suppressor, and the media will hand him the narrative on a silver platter. Suddenly, $4,799 sounds like common sense safety to people who don't know a muzzle from a magazine. Add in the 2026 midterms. If Democrats snag 51 Senate seats, they won't need a single Republican vote. Through budget reconciliation, they could ram it through with a bare majority. That's why it's a landmine. It sits hidden now, waiting for the ground to shake. And if this tactic works, it won't stop with cans. That's the part everyone needs to understand. Suppressors are the test run, the pilot program. If they can get away with this, the same playbook will be used for everything else. Optics, magazines, ammunition. You don't have to ban an AR-15 if you can tax every component until no one can afford one. The government knows it, Murphy knows it, and history proves it. Because we've seen this before. In 1934, the original NFA slapped that $200 stacks on suppressors and short-barreled firearms. $200 at the time was a working man's paycheck for a month. It wasn't a tax, it was a ban disguised as paperwork. From the 1930s through the 1970s, suppressors basically vanished from civilian life. Not because they were outlawed, but because they were unattainable. Only wealthy collectors or Hollywood studios could afford them. Ordinary shooters were priced out. It took decades of inflation to eat away at the $200 figure before suppressor sales began to rebound. And when they did, groups like the American Suppressor Association pushed hard to normalize them as the safety tools they are. That's the only reason today's market exists. Now Murphy wants to rewind the clock, repeat history, and slam the door shut again. Suppressors are not assassin gear. That's a Hollywood myth. They are safety tools. They reduce hearing damage. They keep recoil manageable. They make it possible to shoot responsibly without spiking noise complaints from neighbors. ATF's own statistics show that suppressors are used in virtually no crimes at all, fewer than rifles, which are already demonized in the news cycle. The idea that raising the tax protects public safety is a lie. The real agenda is control through cash. Think about the effect on the average shooter. A guy in Texas wants a suppressor for hog hunting, because shooting feral hogs at night without ear protection will ruin your hearing. Right now he can save up, pay $800 for the can, file the paperwork, and wait for approval. It's a hassle, but it's doable. Under Murphy's tax, that same suppressor becomes a $6,000 purchase. The working man is priced out instantly. A veteran on a fixed income, looking for a suppressor to protect what's left of his hearing, can forget it. That's the reality. This proposal isn't about safety. It's about making sure the people who need these tools most can never access them. The most dangerous part is the precedent. If Americans let this slide, it becomes the new normal. If they can apply inflation-adjusted taxes to suppressors, why not magazines? Why not optics? Why not ammo? Imagine if every 50-round box of 9mm carried a $100 inflation fee. Imagine if every red dot optic came with a $200 stack stamp. You wouldn't need to confiscate anything, the market would collapse on its own. That's the endgame. So where do gun owners go from here? First, don't be lulled into complacency by the $0 stacks win. That doesn't even take effect until January 2026. Until then, it's still wide open. The fight isn't over. It never was. If we celebrate too early, we'll wake up to find the victory erased before we ever taste it. That's why organizations like the Gun Owners of America, the Firearms Policy Coalition, and the American Suppressor Association are sounding the alarm. They know this amendment isn't just a nuisance, it's a direct attack designed to undo decades of progress. The only way forward is vigilance. Watch every must-pass bill. Read the fine print. Call your representatives. Make sure they know we see the tricks, we see the camouflage, and we won't accept it. Because the truth is, they didn't kill the NFA tax, they just knocked it down. And right now the other side is standing over it with a defibrillator, ready to shock it back to life, at nearly $5,000 a pop. Suppressors, SBRs, SBSs, these are not gangster toys. They're ordinary tools that make shooting safer, smarter, and more responsible. They don't belong in the hands of only the rich. They belong to every American exercising their rights. That's the hill to stand on. Not just fighting to keep the $0 stacks, but tearing the rotten structure of the NFA out by the roots once and for all. Because if we don't, history will repeat itself. The same tactic that worked in 1934 will work again in 2025. And this time, with inflation as the excuse, the price of freedom will be pushed so high that ordinary people will never touch it again. So the question is, are we going to let them? Are we going to sit back while a $5,000 tax is buried in the defense budget, waiting to explode under our feet? Or are we going to fight to make sure that the Second Amendment means what it says, that the right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed? The fight isn't over. In fact, it's only just beginning.